Okay, so the Chardonnay, you had touched on that. Could you please tell me, because your Chardonnay is unique. It's got a real crisp, clean taste, which I love because I'm not a fan of buttery and oaky. I mean, to each their own. It's just not my preference. What is what are you guys doing to your Chardonnay to give it that unique character? What's the secret?
The main story that Salvatore always say, but it's true, is that Salvatore's wife, Tini, she's from Austria. And she's like, guys, this is amazing what we do here, but one thing you cannot do is some good white wine like Austria. And of course, Salvatore, it's like, wait, let's see what we can do with all these different microclimate. But the main reason, the main things behind that wine, it's every wine, like we were saying earlier, you have to afford, you have to, because it costs a lot of money to do that. The fundamental of Il Borro, it was to make a wine not for the market, but the opposite. So there was a lot of research in every type of soil to see what was the best grape that could grow over there. So on the top of the state, which is very a few acres, is not very big. Thanks to that minerality, we could grow some more Sangiovese, but the winemaker, which is one of the best five Stefano Chioccioli winemaker that we have today, said, in Tuscany it's really hard planting white wine. Most common is the Vermentino, but it grows better when it's a little warmer, by the beach, by the ocean. Is like the other alternative. It's a Chardonnay because your soil are very similar to the Chablis, in France, in minerality, in limestone, and we try it. We try with a few vineyards, and then it grow every year, and we don't need any wood in that wine, as you can tell when you taste it, and it has that very not sparkling, but very crispy, foodness and very sharp. But the minerality, I think, is what keeps that wine so interesting. But fruity, crispy. It's beautiful for a Chardonnay because it's different than a Chablis. And another selling points in Tuscany, you don't find wines like that. Tuscany is a red wine region. The Chardonnay that come out of Tuscany, most of them, which are not very many, they have to use oak. Exactly like California, you have to give the vanilla that little help. The rest, you can have some table wine made with Ansonica, with Vermentino, that mostly come from the coast. They're everyday wine. Tonight we're gonna try here. We've done it already. A 2016 vintage of the Lamelle Chardonnay, which is really interesting because we can see how the wine can evolve without the help of the wood, which is extremely difficult. And we tried a couple of weeks ago. It was fantastic.
So, not only is it unusual that you produced a great white wine in Tuscany, but you also did something else that the other people typically do, which is you did not use oak.
Right.
And why were these other people using oak? What was the thought process that they have to use oak in Tuscan white wines?
Well, because if you don't have the right terroir, and for marketing purposes or needs, you have to produce a white wine, you have to do what you can do.
Uh,
And we didn't need to do that. Even if we use about 20% in old barrel, so there is a little that goes in oak. Every year is a little different, depends on the vintage, but we don't use the French new barrique. So for us, it's still unoaked, even if it does a little percentage goes, into a bigger barrel. But depends. It's not even true every year.
the impression I'm getting is that putting the white wine in oak for Tuscany, because it's not a white wine region, that helps the wine. Is it kind of like a band-aid maybe?
I wouldn't say band-aid. I would say it gives additional layers of complexity to the wine.
Okay.
that may not be there, that nature might have produced for them.
Okay.
And for Il Borro, kind of more of a concise answer to your question would be, I mean, with Stefano Chioccioli, with Salvatore, they let nature dictate the type of wine that we produce. So that's why I always say we're going to make great wine every year, but there's going to be vintage variants because we try to stay as hands off as possible and let the land, let the weather, let nature produce the wine. And I think that's really where the magic happens, is not only because of the terroir that we have, but then also we have leaders in the company that let the land express itself in the bottle.
I think that's how it should be. I mean, because I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not saying all wineries in California do it, because that would be false, but it's fairly common for some of the bigger box wineries in California to make more cookie cutter, consistent year to year. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, there's a place for everything, but I'm not a fan of it. But teach their own.
No, like I said, I mean, for me, I don't come from Italy. I don't come from Tuscany, so I might have a broader perspective on that. I mean, for sure, there's a wine for every market, for every person. But when it comes to making cookie cutter or consistent every year, that really goes back to market demands and just brand management. If you have a customer base that expects you stylistically to stay the same every single year, you're going to start sourcing other grapes. You're going to start sourcing from other vineyards in order to make that consistent style. And again, I'm not trying to take away from that, but for Il Borro, you lose that sense of place when that happens. When you start pulling grapes from other vineyards, you start maybe using wines from other years, you start adding oak. I mean, when you start adding all these other things into the recipe, if that's what you want to call it, you lose more and more of its sense of place.
Oh, kind of like having been a chef, if I'm going to make something, the more stuff I add to it, the more I'm taking away from what I started with. Sustainability practices. I know you're organic, but what else? And you said biodynamic to some degree as well. Could you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Please tell us a bit about the biodynamic and the sustainability practices.
Yes, to make it a little short, because it's a very complex thing. Organic, there are practices. You can even get certified and everything. Biodynamic is more a philosophy. So what we do, and I don't talk about the others, it's definitely do organic practices. The whole winery and the hotel, in our case, is run by solar panel. So we actually make 3 times the energy that we consume. So we give it back to the grid and they pay us. But that's very, very important. But also, like Darrell was saying, we use a lot of biodynamic practices. The phase of the moon, when you pick up the grapes, the horse manure. We have our own cows. We use the manure that we keep it for 6 months in a corn, from the cow, in the land, in the field, and then we use that manure. We mix it with water, and we use as a fertilizer. We use a green manure, which is in between the vines. We use how you call it, sexual confusion, yes, between animals to keep our other animals. Yes, I would do the name, but I don't know in English. Those are all organic practices. The main idea of Salvatore and his father is a 360 degrees production. It means that everything that is used beside sulfur, which is organic also, there's a couple of ingredients you cannot produce it, but let's say even the yeast is produced locally. So our yeast not only is organic, but it's our natural yeast produced in the winery. So at 360 degrees, it means that whatever you use for the production is produced at the winery. In fact, Il Borro, it's really, I always say it is not really a winery, it's more a farm. You know, only today we're 2,000 acres almost, and only 250 are planted in vine. The rest are olive groves. We have more than 1,000 trees to make really nice extra virgin olive oil. We have a production of organic honey with the bees. We have our own chickens. We make spelt for an organic beer. We
Wow.
just started producing pecorino cheese.
Organic vegetables.
Organic vegetables, fruit. I mean, it's really a farm, but all that production is used for a process. So that it really goes beyond organic. It's more biodynamic, all that. So we decided to be certified organic, but not biodynamic, at least not yet, even if we use a lot of biodynamics practices.
So it sounds like you are almost a self-sustaining mini community.
Absolutely, yes, yes, it could be. Definitely, you know, we feed the two restaurants. We have a main beautiful restaurant and a little smaller one where we make pizza too. They both, I would say 60-70% it's products that come from El Borro. We even sell the vegetables at the farmers market in downtown Florence.
Wow.
You have the little stand, yes.
Yeah, your property is, you know, especially coming from experience working in 5-star hotels and resorts, it's impressive.
We're very fortunate to have a family behind, which, you know, can afford to do a project like that, which is extremely expensive. But the idea is to give a message and to share with the others. It's a message of sustainability, and today is so important because, you know, many wineries, many fields, many people that are struggling, and sometimes you have to take shortcuts. And fortunately, they don't. They're very pioneers. So even for the Chardonnay, but many other wines, is always a research. We have grapes that are not bottled, and we try and search every year to do different things in the wine, but also food wise. And the last wine, you know, the came out is the Petruna, which is making this terracotta clay pot amphora. You know, they're fantastic. It's the only Sangiovese that basically in Tuscany doesn't age in wood. And people don't think about that, but it was made by the Etruscan. We're talking 1,000 years ago, right there where we are. Every other wine from Montalcino, from the Chianti, they all age in wood. Sangiovese, even in the simple Chianti, is aged in wood. Ours stays 12 months in this terracotta clay pot, I think you can call it.
Oh.
In contact with the skin grapes, which is super unusual. You rarely hear, I never heard of any other production where you actually have the skin grapes in contact with the fermenting must for 12 months.
So I assume it's got some tannin.
It does, but I would not say they're overly aggressive tannin. There's definitely structure and tannin there, but I mean, it's a beautiful, elegant wine.
Very interesting because they're tannins not from the wood, but they're tannins that come from the grass, we call it, from the seed.
Yeah,
the
pits
and the skins.
Yes,
Yeah.
because it stays in contact.
Does oak give off tannin?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was just the seeds, the pits, and the stems.
Mm-mm.
In well, California is a good example. Most of the California gets it from the wood or the barrel.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
That's why there is different type of toast of the barrel, but also different wood. American barrel is stronger, so it will give that tannins, but that's 100% from the oak.
Yeah, that's right. American oak is known for being quite strong.
Pretty strong, yes.
I mean, without trying to get too scientific here, American oak is known for a higher level of what they call trihydroxybenzoic acids, which is also known as vanillic acid, and that's where you get that vanilla tone from.
Oh.
Where French oak is higher, and it also has gallic acid, which is also attributed to tannin or mouthfeel. French oak has more of the gallic acid and less of the trihydroxybenzoic acid.
That's why your lamelle that you like doesn't have that taste, the vanilla taste, while against something from California that does have the tropical fruit, the vanilla taste. That is exactly from what Darrell was saying.